So I've been using Dan Heng since the game started, and I'm still using him now, just because I run a 4-star only account, and Dan Heng has insane DPS potential as long as you use his talent and the enemy is slowed and you make sure everything is lined up. He has some great DPS. And today we're going to go over the teammates that you should use to get the most out of Dan Heng, and which teammates have the best synergy with him, and which teammates have the easiest time proccing his talent, which is integral to his kit. So the main thing about picking characters for a Dan Heng team, if you want him to be the primary carry in the team, is to pick characters that can trigger his talent very easily. So firstly, we're going to discuss the Harmony units. We have Bronya, we have Tingyun, and we have Asta. All of them work well with him, but I think Asta is the one out of the three that I would least recommend for him. Her ultimate is the only way that she can proc Dan Heng's talent, and having to save your ultimate or use it around his talent can be very annoying if you don't have the correct speed. Whereas Tingyun, it's very easy for her to proc Dan Heng's talent whenever, really. She can proc it with her skill, and she can proc it with her ultimate. And she batteries him really well, and they just have really good synergy. Same thing with Bronya. Bronya has a very easy time proccing his talent as well. So I think Tingyun and Bronya are the best two. I just think most of the people, if you're running Dan Heng as a DPS, you probably don't have Bronya free for him, especially if you have StRail or someone. Bronya just works much better, and she works better with a hyper carry, and Dan Heng has really insane damage, but I wouldn't classify him as a hyper carry. So next we're going to talk about Nihility units, just in case you don't have the Harmony units listed before. Let's say you only have Asta, so instead you want to use a Nihility unit. You have three options. You have Welt, who has good synergy with Dan Heng. Just in case Dan Heng wants to use ultimate on a target that isn't already previously slowed, Welt can apply that slow to that target, and then Dan Heng can ultimate for the full extra damage. Then we have Pilla. Pilla has that amazing defense shred, and she has a great CC, so you can bring less sustain units. You can even, with Pilla, if they have ice weakness, you could probably run Dan Heng, Tingyun, Pilla, and March. Like, that could definitely be something that you run. And then lastly, we have Silverwolf. Silverwolf is amazing for Dan Heng, but you probably want to use Silverwolf elsewhere because she is a premium unit. And I do think, like, if you only have Dan Heng and Sushang, I think Silverwolf works better for physical, just because physical break is amazing, and wind break it's okay. It's not nearly as good as physical though, for sure. So I think I would either ideally want to use Welt or Pilla for him if you want to use the Nihility unit. So nextly, we're going to be covering using a sub DPS for a Dan Heng comp. Dan Heng does not have good clearing potential, especially for fights that have a lot of units, a lot of AoE that is required. So you could drop either your Harmony unit or your Nihility unit. I would probably more likely drop the Nihility unit just because it's much easier to proc his talent on demand if you do have a Harmony unit like Tingyun. And we're going to go for two options that I think are the best for him to use as sub DPS. I think are Serval and QQ. I think those are the two best, and they are both erudition. They both have a decent AoE. Serval's AoE is excellent. QQ's AoE is okay. It's not the highest, but she can also just help you clear targets on the side, especially if they have quantum weakness. I would not recommend any of the destruction units. The only one that actually could probably work is Arlen, just because he doesn't require that many skill points, or any at all, really. But the only thing with Arlen is that you would then have to pay special attention to him just because of his health mechanic. But that could be run later down the line as well. Nextly, we're going to go over preservation and abundance units that Dan Heng can use. Realistically, he can use any of them. The only one I wouldn't recommend for him is just Fire MC. Not because Fire MC is bad, it's just that Fire MC really has no way of proccing Dan Heng's talent, which is a huge part of his DPS. And you do have the option of running any of the other units that can proc his talent. March can proc it, Natasha can proc it, Bailu can proc it, and Gepard can proc it with his ultimate as well. I think the easiest, Natasha has the easiest time proccing it because she can proc it with her skill and ultimate, and she has the cleanse on top, so I would rate her the highest for Dan Heng, but realistically, it doesn't really matter. You just need to have the sustain units on both sides. As long as you're not using Fire MC for his side, you can run any of them. Okay, let's go over some sample team comps that I think are the best for him for free-to-play players, and then his quote-unquote like best in slot team comp. So for free-to-play, a comp that I would run with him would be, if you are on a floor, it doesn't have too many AoE enemies, I would run something like Dan Heng, Ting Yun, Pela, and either Natasha or March, depending on if the enemy has the ice weakness. The ice weakness is key here. If the enemy doesn't have an ice weakness, I would take out both Pela and March, and I would probably put something like Dan Heng, Ting Yun, Natasha, and then one unit that's either a sub DPS that matches the enemy's weakness, or a Nihility unit that matches the enemy's weakness. So let's say if it's an imaginary weakness, I would put Welton there, or if it's a quantum weakness, I would put QQ in there to cover that weakness type. And then later on, if you want him to do the biggest damage, you would just run the tried and true, you could run Dan Heng, Bronya, Ting Yun, and Silverwolf. That's a hyper carry style team comp. The only thing is that he's not really effective with that type of stuff is if there's not only 1 or 2 units, just because STYLE has Resurgence, and Jing Yuan obviously has that insane cleave and AoE damage. He would take just much more time to clear that stuff. So I think a full hyper carry comp is not what I would recommend, but obviously once you're at that level of investment and stuff, it doesn't really matter. He's just slightly worse at that playstyle than the 5-star units that I just mentioned. Thank you guys for watching, and I will be making a lot more team comp videos for a lot of the 4-stars as well, especially as I build a lot more of them and I get further into the Memory of Chaos. Thank you for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day.